See, I'm trying to do a bit better at this vlogging thing. I actually got dressed and put makeup on my face, so we're getting there. I mean, maybe next time I'll actually do my hair or something, but sorry, it's not happening today. So, welcome back for another project. It's September 13th. It's a Monday. I know that much. And since the last vlog, I've mostly been working on getting this room ready to be a proper sewing room. We're not quite there yet. I know I keep saying that we're nearly there, but there are still some things that need to be done. I need to do some things. I need to clear up in here. There's still some work that needs to be done. We need sort of doors painting and handles on doors, things like that. But I'm carrying on with my sewing projects anyway that I've got planned because, as I mentioned in my previous vlog, I've got some deadlines that I'm working with. Having finished my red dress for my brother's wedding, which I'm really pleased with, my next project is a bit more historical, a bit more costumey based because, so if you were watching COVID, you may have seen Liz from Lizscapism's video about 1950s underpinnings she was making. I kind of have a bit of a thing for retro lingerie, and you can absolutely buy reproduction vintage lingerie from various modern lingerie companies. However, it's expensive and I can't afford that. So I've decided to take a DIY approach. And whereas Liz's video was about 1950s underpinnings, my era is slightly earlier, 1930s and 40s. So I'm going to be making for my next project some retro underwear in that earlier 30s, 40s style. I am starting with one of these repro paper patterns. I have once before tried to make a 1940s style soft cut bra and it went hideously wrong. On that occasion, I used like a free pattern I found online and some sort of vintage guidelines and things like that from magazines from the period, and it really didn't work for me. It was a bad way to start making lingerie, I think. I should have just stuck with a pattern because I really didn't know what I was doing. So this time I've learnt my lesson and I'm using this Simplicity 8510. Let's see if we can't get a nice shot of this for you, which is a soft cut bra and a pair of what I would call knickers, French knickers, also known as tap pants, depending on where you are in the world. There are the line drawings. So one has a yoke, one just has, I think that's just a bias bound waistband, and the bra has a little bit of elastic at the back. This video is going to be about making these. So I've already cut the pattern pieces out. They're all ready to go. I've got my fabric. I wonder where I put it. This is the issue when you tidy up. I can then never find anything ever again. Oh look, here it is. I've got my fabric. This is, I believe it's 100% viscose. It's like a vintage rayon and it's kind of a crinkle viscose. It shrinks down majorly when you wash it. So I've given it a very thorough iron. And the reason I went for this was because it's that perfect shade of vintage lingerie, like rose pink, tea rose pink. When you see a lot of underwear in this color from this period, you also see it tends to be like in mint greens, or so lots of pastel shades essentially. So that's the fabric. Where have I put those notions? In here. So what I also found was this scallop lace edging. There we go. Which is very pretty and matches the pink fabric quite nicely as well. This is going to kind of be like a little lace insertion on the knickers. I haven't found a way to incorporate this onto the bra because it's too wide. You know that pattern has like a ruffle around the boob, but that's too much. So that's the plan. I don't know how much I'll get done today. I injured my back earlier this morning, so if I look kind of wooden, that's why. Not great for cutting out, unfortunately. So I might have to do that off camera and come back to you when I'm feeling a bit better for starting to make, because right, okay, so the reason why I didn't want to make one of my tutorial style videos for this project, along with me being short of time this month, is also I have no idea what I'm doing. I've never made underwear before. Well, I have made underwear, but like bloomers and chemises and stuff, not 20th century underwear, and particularly never a bra. And as I had that previous disastrous experience with making bras, I really do not feel confident to make a tutorial where I'm telling you what to do because I myself have no idea. So this is why I wanted to do this more informal sort of make. So this is kind of come with me on my journey as I try and make some vintage underwear, as opposed to this is how you make vintage underwear. So I hope you enjoyed this. You'll probably see me fail miserably at some point, but that's all part of the process. So that's how we all learn. Time to stop talking and start sewing. So see you soon. Simplicity 8510 is now cut out, but I've been thinking about this because my original intention was to make this underwear set very 1930s, but I also do want a more 1940s style set. And this pattern, the Simplicity 8510, the 1930s knickers, they're not particularly conservative with the fabric. Generally when I do 1940s, I tend to do more make, do, amend World War II era 1940s than I do high Hollywood glamour 40s. And so it's weird to wear like a silky bias cut pair of knickers or whatever with a make, do, amend outfit. So I've been through my stash of vintage patterns, and I have this pattern which isn't in my size. It's quite a bit bigger. It's about 6 inches too big for me. But pattern for these knickers is much more like the kind of economic use of fabric that you would expect from the 1940s. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a 1930 set of knickers from that lovely pink rayon-like viscose that I showed you earlier with the lace, and that's going to be sort of like my jazzy, sexy 1930s pair of knickers. And then I'm going to make a 1940s pair based on this pattern from some scrap fabric, and that's going to be my make, do, and mend type pair of knickers. Am I overthinking my underwear? Probably, but this sort of thing is important to me, and to me it's worth doing. So the afternoon is getting on. So I finished tracing off that pattern for the Butterick vintage knickers and adjusting those, and then I was going to cut that out, but my back is really playing up. I've got a nice back on it right now, so definitely not well enough to do that today. So instead what I did was I've marked up with tailor's chalk all the other pieces for the other 1930s set. So I'm putting that 1940s pair of knickers to the side, and I'm just going to work on the rose pink 1930s set. So they're all marked up. I've also gotten to the point now, I've tacked together by hand one layer of the bra just to double check the fit. But you can see I'm pretty happy with the fit. This gets gathered down in this pattern, so we'll be a bit more sort of like that, but it's looking pretty good. Before I cut this out, I did a lot of comparing my measurements to the pattern, and I also pinned the paper pattern pieces in place, and I put them over a bra, like a reddish wear bra that I have that fits me really well, so that I could see how much off it was going to be. Because of course the other thing is most modern bras have lots of elastic in them so that they stretch, whereas vintage bras didn't. So there is some elastic in this, but only sort of at the back for the fastening, and the front sort of under bust area and the cradle have no elastic. So let's see how that goes, but I'm pretty certain that this is going to fit. The seams seem to be hitting me in the right place. The bust darts are sort of expiring in the right place. I think I'm going to leave this here today. Yeah, I think I'm going to leave this here today because it's beautiful weather outside. And I mean, it's late in September for it to be such glorious weather in the UK, so I think I'm going to spend some time in the garden topping up on vitamin D levels before the winter sets in, and come back to this another day. I feel bad because obviously I need to get this done, or I want to get this done, because next weekend is the wedding, and the week after that I'm house sitting, and then after that it's very quickly approaching Halloween. And I have a Halloween project I'm working on as well. So I do want to get this done, but actually there's not much construction or sewing that goes into these. They're quite small garments, you know what I mean? I'm pretty sure I can whiz them up in a day, probably even in just like a few hours. So I'm not too stressed about this just yet. So I feel like I'm allowed to take some time off to rest my back and recuperate a bit in the garden. This is literally the very last sun of the sun. It's 4 o'clock. It's just about to sink behind the houses, so I've just made it in time to top up my vitamin D. Got my knitting, so I'll see you soon. So it is now day 2 of the making process for Simplicity 8510. I think what I'm going to do today is work on getting the bra of this sewn up and ready to go, and hopefully finished. It shouldn't take too long. I've had a read of the instructions. It seems a pretty straightforward construction. The issue was going to be, of course, checking the fit, because I don't know, I'm not sure. This is all unknown territory for me. So I'd like to get that done now, because if I do need to change or alter anything, that's going to be a lot more complicated than a pair of knickers. So I think that's what I'm going to start with this morning. I'm going to sew this bra together, make sure that it fits, make sure that I'm happy with it. And if I've got time as well this afternoon, I will start making up the knickers as well. I want to French seam everything, which isn't great for fitting as you go, but we'll see what happens. I'll figure it out, I'm sure. I'm in a lot of pain with my back. Bloody perfect timing for the big family event of the year, you know, but anyway. So I'm going to be taking things easy because I really do not want to be so incapacitated that I miss the all-important wedding this Saturday. So let's start sewing the bra. Okay, so now I have 2 separate layers of a bra. One has a bit of elastic tacked on, as you can see. This is the only elastic in the bra, which is at the back. I've also now sort of tried this on with the elastic on. I'm pretty certain that this is going to be quite a good fit for me. Like I say, I did measure extensively the pattern before I started making this. So that's not necessarily to say it's going to be a good fit for everybody. I did, you know, have to really study the pattern to make sure it was going to be all right on me. So the next step is to stitch these together and essentially bag them out. However, there's going to be an issue with that, which I shall show you now. So as you can see, where I've cut it, I didn't do a brilliant job of cutting it out very accurately. That's probably because I did it in kind of a hurry, and also partly because of the nature of this incredibly slippery fabric. So, but if you look on this one, however, I've sewn the step, the disparity in the fabric to be at the top as opposed to the bottom. So it's all a little bit wonky. Probably not going to be the end of the world. I can probably cheat it. But yeah, be careful when cutting out, folks, because can you see that other corner as well? Like, so I'm going to pin these together. I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do here, stitch it up, bag it out and press it, and talk to you later. All right, so what I've done is I've pinned the 2 layers together now, and what I've done to balance it all up is I just folded it in half along the center front seam here. And then it seems like the back pieces both match fine, but the front pieces didn't. So then I just matched them up and matched, you know, the balance marks and the seams and everything, and I've just trimmed it so that they at least match each other, even if they don't match the original pattern. So one of these then, this side, is a little short compared to the other, but that's okay. I'm not too worried about that. So I'm going to, I had originally wanted to tack this, but now all my seam lines are off that I chalked on. So I think I'm just going to have to put it through the machine and hope, using the guide on the foot plate, that everything will work out fine. So I'm going to sew it. Wish me luck. Okay, and so we have it all sewn together. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I've got to trim all the edges so I can turn it out nicely, you know, clip the curves, etc. Turn it right side out and then press it, and then we'll have a look. All right, and so it's starting to look like a bra. Hooray! Although I think there might be something missing in the instructions, because this elastic is still only basted in. Yeah, so the elastic is only basted in, and I've read through the entire instructions and there isn't a step where it's going to get sewn, so I don't know if that's just like a mistake in the pattern or if I've missed something, but I think I need to stitch this in place before I slip stitch this down. You know, that doesn't seem very secure for a bit of elastic. Anyway, so the next step is to gather up the center front, and then it says to use a piece of ribbon as a stay, so I'll check my ribbon stash. So yeah, I'll check my ribbons and see what I've got that would be appropriate. I don't know if I've got anything that's going to match this colour though, so I don't know whether I should go out and buy something that will match, or just use a scrap of the fabric I've got. We'll see, we'll see. So then after that, it's kind of closures and straps, and with that, I'm not going to put lace around the top of this because I quite like it. I quite like this sort of minimalistic, geometric 30s vibe we've got going on. So stitch my elastic, gather this up, fastenings. Let's see how much I can get done before I run out of energy. It's 4 o'clock, so things are about to get tired. All right, see you in a bit. So it's 4:30. I highly doubt I'm going to get any more sewing done today because my back really hurts and I'm very quickly getting tired. But so what I decided to do, I'm basically at just hand finishing stage now. So what I've done is I've made up all the little bits of like machine sewing that I will need. So like this needs to go on there. I've got my straps sewn up. I haven't turned those right side out yet because I need trimming and doing pressing and all that. That's fiddly. Got my stay. In the end, what I did for the stay was covered a bit of this twill tape that I had, a scrap of twill tape, with the viscose, and I think that actually works really well because viscose isn't strong enough on its own to really stop the fabric stretching, but the twill tape supports that, but then it blends in lovely, really nicely. So tomorrow what I've got to do is I've got to slip stitch this in place. I've got to turn under the raw edge of this elastic and sew some hooks on, and then I've got to put eyes on the other half, and then they kind of get sandwiched, so the eyes are pointing that way, and then you stitch over the eyes and flip that around so that the eyes are kind of poking out there, a bit like when you see like on hook and eye tape or like on the back of an ordinary bra, and so then it will all sort of hook up quite nicely like that. Oh, and I have to slip stitch that as well. You know, you can see I've actually machined that in place now because that was just going to be tacked. So, and of course then the straps need to go on. But yeah, I'm really happy with it. Hang on, let me show you my face. So yeah, I'm really happy with how it's coming together. A bit ambitious of me to think that I was going to finish today, as always, but that's okay. Still adjusting to my reduced activity levels. As well, this has been there's lots of fiddly bits now. I like the fiddly bits, so I'm kind of stopping here because I know I'm going to really enjoy. I'm going to have a really nice day sewing tomorrow. So today's Tuesday, so hopefully I will definitely finish the bra tomorrow, and then I've got Thursday to make up the knickers as well, and then they should be done before the wedding. I'm not wearing these for the wedding, I just will be away, so can't do any sewing after the wedding. One of the annoying things is I've been using vintage Silco thread for this project because I found one that was a perfect shade of tea rose, or whatever it's called, rose pink. And I had 2 reels of it, so I put 1 reel on the bobbin, I put 1 reel on the machine, and I've run out of bobbin thread, so I've still got a little bit of thread left, which I hope I'm going to be able to use for my hand sewing and hand finishing. But yeah, now I'm going to have white thread as opposed to the pink. Yeah, so that's kind of annoying. I don't know what I'm going to do for the knickers then. I have got some more vintage thread in a slightly incorrect shade of pink, but it's kind of too pink as opposed to peach. But I'll probably end up using that because I'd like to use up some of my vintage threads, because you've got to use the stuff, you've got to use the nice stuff. And that's one of the things that going through my sewing room has definitely taught me, is that I have all this wonderful stuff, why don't I use it? Why do I hoard it in boxes and never look at it? So I'm going to use the nice stuff on my vintage bra. Anyway, I think that's going to be it for tonight. Maybe I'll do some hand sewing in front of the telly, who knows? So I'll see you tomorrow morning. So do you remember when I was like, yeah, this isn't a tutorial because I don't know what I'm doing? Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. So yesterday evening, I came back in here and I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do some hand sewing. So I hand stitched the stay in place, I closed up this weird opening that I wasn't sure about, and I put the hooks on and the little like cover thing for the hooks. And then it came to the eyes, and the instructions for the eyes really confused me because I was like, it says that it should be from the raw edge and I don't have a raw edge. And why are the hooks facing this way? And then I have to flip this thing round, and then it's just really bizarre. I don't understand what's happening. Yeah, that's because I did it wrong. Essentially, I got my left and my right confused, which, to be honest, I don't think is just me being dyslexic. I think actually the instructions are confusing, and I will demonstrate that. Unsurprisingly, I've had to bodge it, and I've also had to chop a bit of this off, so it's now a bit smaller on one end than it is on the other. But it actually fits okay, so I'm not completely mad about that, because so essentially I put the hooks in the wrong place and I tried it on and it fit, so I'm going with that. I don't want to make it any bigger than that. So I've got to figure out a way now to botch this together so that it works as a functioning bra, which I think I figured out, but I figured that out at like 11 o'clock last night, and I was like, no, I'm going to bed, I'm done with this. So I'll show you what I mean now. First of all, I'll show you where I went wrong in the instructions. So what I got wrong was this step 3. Prepare facing same as for brazier, omitting elastic. Okay, did that. Press under on left back end of facing, which I did. With right sides together, pin facings to brazier, matching centre front, side seams and small dots. Stitch pivoting with needle in front, leaving left back edge open. Obviously, the left back edge depends on which way round you're looking at it, and which is the facing and which is the right side. So I assumed that this was, you know, the front, if you like, the wrong side of the front as opposed to the wrong side of the facing, because even though they distinguish between what's the right and the wrong side of the fabric, they don't distinguish in the diagram which side's the facing and which side is the main. So I assumed we were looking at the front of the garment, as you would, and therefore leaving the left edge open would be this edge. But in the diagram, the left edge in the diagram is stitched shut, and the opening's on the right. What? Do you see what I mean? Do you see where I'm confused? I still don't really understand where I went wrong, because this finished photograph here is from the inside, that's the facing side up with the elastic on the end to the right. And that doesn't look like a raw edge, you know, how am I supposed to, what? Anyway, so I'm confused. So the issue is then over here, you're supposed to stitch the hooks on, and this is a raw edge, apparently, not a seam, a raw edge. And then you stitch this like facing bit over the top and flip it round to the inside and tuck it in where you've left that raw edge open and sew it down. But I can't do that, of course, because I've done the wrong edges or whatever. So I'm going to show you what I'm actually doing, how I'm fixing my own mistake. So what I'm going to do essentially is, so I'm going to stitch the eyes onto this facing underlap bit, and then I'm just going to turn under both edges of the back of the bra, shove this in so that the fastening bits of the eyes are covered, something like that. And then I might hand sew it, to be honest. I might top stitch it so it's nice and secure, and then just slip stitch where it's come open there and make it nice and secure and all that. And you can see that the fabric's marked. That's where the eyes were sewn on originally. So I'm turning back quite a lot to get this to fit. You get me? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew these on, and then I'm going to rig this back bit, and then the bra should be functioning, and it just needs the straps, which need turning right side out, which is probably going to be a pain, but anyway. I'm going to get on with this. I'll speak to you soon. So in the end, I was able to machine over the hooks and eyes once I'd sewn them onto this little facing bit, and then I kind of rolled this bit out the way and machined along here. And so now I can do what the instructions were telling me to do, which is turn this around and then tuck this in and slip, 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 slip stitch that in place. All in all, it wasn't that too difficult of a fix, but still annoying. Anyway, I'm going to slip stitch this in place now. All right, so I've got one strap turned through, looking nice. It needs a press, of course, but I thought I'd show you how I did this because this worked so successfully. I'm kind of shocked. The instructions suggested using a thick needle and attaching a strong thread to one end and pushing the needle through, eye first. And so normally when I do this, what usually happens to me is it gets stuck, I tug at it for ages, and then eventually the knot comes out and I end up with a mess. But actually, I don't know if it's just whether I've secured the thread enough. I've done like a little bit of like weaving it so that the pressure is distributed over a larger surface area, or if it's just because this fabric is so sort of light and slippery, it doesn't really matter. This was relatively successful. I found that it was best to get the other end of the thread out so that I didn't accidentally lose the needle, and then rather than pushing all this excess down to the end straight away, it worked best if I like coaxed it first of all, a bit like that, so that once the end kind of was on its way, I could pull it quite happily along. Now I've put the camera on, it doesn't want to play ball, does it? There we are. So it's gone inside now, and it should just be a case of, yep. And there we have it, a lovely turned loop. I did have to cut the embroidery thread to get it out again because I secured it so well. These need a press, and then they need to be attached to the bra, but then it's finished and we can move on to some knickers. Let's get cracking. And so we have a bra. I'm quite happy with it, you know. I have tried it on, it does fit. I'm not showing you on me because this is still quite sheer and it's verging on the indecent, so I might put something in here for when I wear it. I'm really pleased with it. It's very comfortable, definitely more comfortable than a modern bra, but it's not very supportive. It's definitely not a lift and separate kind of job. As you can see, because I've ended up trimming some off here, this distance isn't even, but meh, I'm not worried about that. The only thing that is a bit disappointing is, I don't know if you can kind of see on the stand, especially, you know, I'm bigger than this stand. This edge here gapes quite a lot, and I don't know whether that's because I've stretched it out as I'm sewing it, because obviously this is a diagonal, so it's cut on the bias, or whether that's just the nature of this kind of bra. I could always put a stay in, I suppose, but it's, you know, it's quite a sizable gape. Might be able to steam it into shape. I don't know. It's also, this is quite a loosely woven, slippery type of fabric, so that's probably a part of it as well. But I think it's really cute. I really like it, and it looks, in this colour, in this fabric, it looks so 1930s. I'm really pleased with it. The only thing that's a bit weird was the way it told you to sew on the straps, because it wanted you to hand sew them, but it didn't want you to stitch through all the layers. But then of course you get like that happening. Don't know if you can see what I'm doing there, like that, you know, as the weight is on the lining and not the main. So I just stitched through all the layers, so it's not, you know, it's not completely invisible, but it's pretty neat, you know, and at the back as well. So if I make this again, which I probably will because this is really comfortable and I like these sort of soft cut bras for like lounging around the house in, bralettes I suppose they're called. So I'll probably make this pattern again now that I know that it fits quite successfully. And it wasn't that difficult to make even with me doing it wrong. So if I do make another version of this pattern, I'll have to think of a better way to attach the straps because I'm not happy with the suggested method in the instructions. But apart from that, I'm really pleased. We've got a bra. Time to make some knickers to match. So I didn't check in before I finished sewing yesterday, sorry about that. But before I start today, I will show you where I got to last night. So, done a look like a pair of knickers. Essentially, I just have done the basic construction on these, but because it was French seams, I took my time, I made sure to press everything carefully, all that jazz. So everything is French seamed, including the crotch seam, which I've never done before, and I was a bit worried about that not working around the curve, but it seems to have worked fine. I suppose because this fabric's pretty slippery, I've made it quite a narrow French seam as well, and I used pinking shears to trim down the excess so that the curves would ease in quite nicely. So today, hoping to get these finished, I've got to put the yokes on because I'm making view B of this pattern, which is these ones here, which have a yoke as opposed to bias binding finishing. So yoke on, buttons and buttonholes. I need to decide what buttons I'm using. I need to raid my button stash because I'm not that bothered. I want them to be quite like flat because I don't want to be adding more bulk there or having lumps poking through. Then I've got this beautiful lace which I want to put around the very bottom of the knickers so that they're a bit fancy, a bit fancier. I was hoping that I would have enough lace that I could also maybe like do some sort of pretty accent on the bra as well, maybe something a bit like that, you know, with the point of the lace. However, this lace came with adhesive labels stuck on it, and it's where I've pulled them off, it's completely snagged and ruined the lace, so I'm losing quite a bit, unfortunately, as a result, which I'm kind of annoyed about, but oh well. So that's the plan for today. Yokes, buttons and buttonholes, hems, and then we should be done. Then we should have some underwear. Let's see how this goes. Let's see how this goes today. Never done a yoke like this before. Actually, have I? Is that a lie? I can't remember. See you in a bit. So yokes are on, we've got the back and on the front as well. So you might notice, so you can see I've actually done 2 lines of top stitching, and that's because I made a mistake. I went to understitch the facing, and of course you were supposed to understitch the seam allowance to the main of the fabric because this yoke is on the right side, it's not facing on the inside. But I did it wrong, so then I had a line of stitching from my understitching on the right side and nothing on the wrong side. And I thought, oh well, it just looks like a line of top stitching, I'm going to top stitch the bottom of the yoke anyway, it doesn't matter. And then I thought, oh no, but then this is going to keep rolling round to the front. So I put in another line of top stitching and mimicked that on the bottom so that this top edge is nice and securely stitched in place and shouldn't shift around. And this bottom edge is just decorative to match that. But to be honest, I quite like it. I think it makes a bit more of a feature of this yoke. Yeah, you know, and kind of in the way like of a flat felt seam here and things. I don't hate it. Sometimes we have happy accidents. What is it? Ruth Watkins says, oh yeah, mistakes make the maker. So here we are, this is my little mistake, and I think it's actually turned into something rather beautiful, which is nice. So now the next step is to put the, it's a word beginning with P, people, plackets in. They call them something else, continuous underlap or something, but it's a placket opening essentially in here. And then it will be fastenings, and then I've got to put the lace on the hem. You can see my chalk line from the right side, which isn't ideal, but oh well. I wish to point out that this camera is not picking up the colour accurately at all. This is really pastel, and it's actually much more like salmon in real life. Hopefully I'll be able to get a photograph of the more correct colour at some point. You can also see just how sheer and transparent it is, which I hadn't really anticipated. So these are going to be slightly more risque knickers than originally thought. Oh well, they're going to be sexy. That's okay. We can have sexy knickers. It's fine. All right, so you can see the placket is on. The instructions for this were a little bit different to the way that I usually do a placket. So I think I started doing their method and then abandoned it and did my method, my usual method instead. The raw edge is covered in like a double fold strip, like you do exactly the same for a waistband. And then the top edge is folded in, the top edge at the front is folded in, so that then when you overlap them like that, voila. Continuous underlap as they call it, or a placket as it's more commonly known. So I've done my buttonholes. I went for the flattest buttons I had in my stash because I don't want any lumps or bumps really underneath my clothing wearing these. You know, it's unusual to have fastenings on your knickers, but the buttonholes were a little bit of a pain. They're not my neatest buttonholes. There's several layers of this fabric now under there, and yeah, it wasn't brilliant, but oh well, they work, they function. All that's left to do then is to apply the lace to the hem. And so I think I'm going to do this like you would insertion lace. So I'm going to pin it on in the place where it needs to be, zigzag, kind of applique it on almost with a very small, very narrow zigzag. And then once it's all zigzagged in place, I'm going to cut away the excess behind it. I think that's probably going to be the neatest, easiest and quickest way to do it. Gonna be a long old slog because it's a very intricate scallop pattern around the top of the lace, so I'm not really looking forward to this, but oh well, let's crack on with it. That took forever. Oh my god, that took forever. But it's done now. I do actually really like the way it looks, so I'll show you in close up what I've done. So as you can see, this is the crotch seam. I didn't put the lace sort of between the legs because I thought that would be uncomfortable and maybe a little bit unhygienic. I've just put it around, all the way around, over the seam, around the leg, and back again. And I'll show you it from the right side first of all. So you can just about see how I've zigzagged it on. It's not necessarily particularly neat stitching because I had to pivot about every 4 or 5 stitches around the top of these flowers and around these curves. But it's done the job. And then from the wrong side, what I did then was I just trimmed back, not all the way, but most of the way. And the logic is that this zigzag stitch will prevent it fraying, and all the weird angles that this is cut on will prevent it fraying and coming loose as well. For the bits that didn't have the lace, I just did a little double turn and fell hem, because I originally had a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance here, so just folded it in half and half again to match it up and felled it down. And it's pretty invisible from the other side. Anyway, this bit's gonna be between my legs, so very few people are actually gonna see it, and let's hope that the people that might see that bit aren't gonna be interested in the hem on my knickers. So with the knickers done, that means that this project is done because I've got a matching set of underwear. So I'm gonna put these on the stand and I'll talk to you more about this then. And so my 1930s knickers are complete, which means that my 1930s underwear set is also complete. This has been a really fun project for me. When you get to my level of training and experience, things can get repetitive, shall we say. And having made several vintage style dresses on this channel now, I was getting a little bit bored. So this was a brilliant challenge for me because it was familiar enough that I wasn't completely out of my depth floundering, but there were lots of new things and I made mistakes and I learned things, and this was a really good almost reset on my sewing practice because it took me right back to the beginning, took me right back to learning new things and why I love doing this and the problem solving aspect of it. So I've had a lot of fun. The one thing I will say, these are absolutely not perfect and I'm fine with that. The center back of the bra, I think I showed you this earlier, but it's off center because of this mistake that happened with the hooks and eyes there, which is fine. I obviously have my double top stitching instead of single top stitching on the yoke, which I'm calling a design choice, so I'm loving that. The lace was a challenge. And the other thing I would say is, in terms of fit, these knickers fit me really well around the waist, but what I hadn't taken into account in the pattern is that I have quite a hip spring. You can probably, I'm wearing quite a clingy dress today, so you can probably see I have quite a hip spring, and as a result that means that, and you can probably see the creases actually from where I've been wearing it, this placket gapes like that because it doesn't have enough room to accommodate the roundness of my hips. That's something to bear in mind. That's something I should have checked really, but I didn't because I was being a bit lazy, I suppose, or I was pretty confident that this would fit me. I'll be honest with you, I don't often make things that are fitted from the waist down because I don't like to wear that kind of thing. So I don't often practice making them. So I was a bit out of practice, so I forgot to check the high hip measurement as well as the low hip measurement. So like I said, this was a challenge for me. This is all learning. I shan't do that again, I'm sure. And actually it's kind of fine that these gape here. I don't really mind. It leaves room for movement. It leaves room for a big dinner. So I'm not really bothered about that. All in all, I'm really pleased with this set. I think it's going to be a wonderful addition to my vintage wardrobe. I had a lot of fun with this project. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you've enjoyed watching me sew my 1930s underwear set, which I am really proud of. I really love them. I'd love to know what you're working on. This channel, we're nearly at 3,000 subscribers on this channel, which is mind-boggling in itself, but my point is that it's still small enough that I can read all your comments and respond to them. You know, that's not a huge drain on my time and energy. So I'd love to know what you're working on. I'd love to know if you've ever made this pattern or if you've ever made a bra or underwear before and how it went for you, because my attempts have been hit and miss, as you've seen. So I'm putting the 1930s to one side for the moment, but I'm not done with them just yet. I will be coming back to them later in the year. But of course it is now October, and it turns out that Halloween is a thing that people celebrate, and so I'm taking part in this collaboration with Purely Cosplay and Lady Rebecca Fashions and a whole host of other costubers and costumers on Instagram to do this historical Halloween challenge, I suppose, historical Halloween make. So if you're interested in that, that will be coming along towards the end of the month, of course, in time for Halloween. But after that, I will probably be returning to the 1930s. If either of those things sound like something you'd like to see, and you're new here, you can subscribe to this channel. You press the button below and YouTube will let you know when I post my next video. If you're really interested as well, if you select the little bell icon, then you can get a push notification on your phone or whatever you watch videos on to let you know when my next video is up. I think that's enough rambling on for today. Once again, just wanted to say thank you so much for being here. Leave me a comment, let me know what you're working on, and thanks for watching. See you next time.